currently recording. Thank you everyone for coming to Wellness for Helpers. We're very excited to have you here today. My name is Dr. Rachael Marshall. I work at Sacramento State, and I specialize in research in wellness and mindfulness and how counselor educators develop and career readiness. And my colleague, Dr. Joo, is here as well. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Dr. HyunGyung Joo. I'm assistant professor in counselor education program at Sac State and coordinate school counseling program.
Thank you. So today we're going to be talking about wellness for helpers. I'm sure you're all interested in this because you're interested in your own wellness and how to better attend to it or how to attend to it at all. So before we get started, I just want you to take a moment, maybe relax your shoulders, pull those down, and take a breath, unclench your jaw. Those general stress things that we live with at the end of a long week on a Friday, in a pandemic, in an election year, all those other things happening right before Thanksgiving. There's a lot of reasons why your shoulders could be high, but let's go ahead and bring those down. So today we're going to be talking about burnout. We're going to be talking about wellness and self-care. We're going to talk about community-based caring, and we're going to make a plan together. So we're going to learn how to be well together. By the end, together, we will define burnout, self-care, and wellness. We will create a caring community for accountability, and you'll outline your own wellness plan. So let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is talk about burnout, which can be stressful. So I want you to go ahead and recheck your shoulders throughout this process while I talk about burnout and some of the ways in which you might experience it. But before we get into what burnout is, what kind of words come up when I talk about burnout? And you can put those in the chat or you can say them out loud, whichever one you like. But what comes to mind when you think of burnout? Exhaustion, exhausted, yes. Stressed, yes. Fatigue, lack of caring, compassion fatigue. We're going to talk about that one. Empty, lack of motivation, irritable, submission, guilt, yes. All these very strong emotions connected with it. Secondary trauma, yes. We have a lot of initial feelings when we hear the word burnout because it's been used a lot along with self-care. So I want to compare stress and burnout and how they're a little bit different because you're probably experiencing stress. I know if your camera's well on, I'd see some head nods, and stress came up when we talked about burnout too, and sadness as well. But stress is an over engagement. Your emotions are overactive. You've got an urgency, a hyperactivity, but there's still a loss of energy, but this need to keep going. It has a lot of anxiety connected to it. And the damages can be physical as well. With burnout, you have some disengagement, and some of you wrote that inside the chat, that this disengagement, your emotions are kind of blunted. So even though you're feeling sadness and stress, there's almost a numbness to it as well. You might feel helpless or even hopeless. Some of you cited a lack of motivation, that depressed feeling, and it can have a lot of damage to your emotions when we're looking at burnout. So a lot of us will experience stress, but I also want to say that a lot of us will experience burnout. It's a form of impairment. So I know from our registration, we have a mixture of helpers. We have counselors and coordinators and teachers and people working to aid others. And that as a counselor myself, we know that burnout is something that impairs our practice. It's an impairment. It's emotional exhaustion. It prevents empathy, which is something that as helpers, we really cherish in our work. We need to be able to empathize, but it does blunt your emotions. It might also look at unprofessional behaviors. And I encourage you, as we're talking about this burnout sensation and what burnout looks like, are there things that come up for you that might bubble to the surface and think, oh, I felt that, or oh, I feel that now, or maybe I know someone who does? I encourage you to write down those notes just to yourself, because that reflection process can be powerful. So some of the things that might start happening, you might show up late, maybe miss appointments, maybe not responding to a client or student's needs in the way that you used to. And of course, the damage to the relationship that you're building. For counselors, we call that this therapeutic relationship that we're building with our clients. And it can be demonstrated through pessimism, cynicism, and indifference. Some of that might come out as sarcasm, even where we're making jokes at the expense of the people that we're helping. And some of that can be working through some of the stress. But when it gets to the point where we're actually damaging the relationship we're building with our clients and students, it kind of starts to hurt us emotionally as well. And there are different types of impairment. So some people wrote this: compassion fatigue, secondary trauma, vicarious trauma. We're going to talk about compassion fatigue and vicarious trauma throughout today. And something to remember about vicarious trauma is it is a process. Is the process of connecting with clients' pain and impacting counselors' empathy and health. So vicarious trauma, we're connecting with our clients, but we're also hurting our empathetic response because we're now impacted in an unhealthy way. Compassion fatigue is a deep feeling of sympathy and sorrow for someone who's suffering, which brings a strong desire to alleviate or remove that pain. Like, I have to do something. I really need to do something. And you move into this point of, like many of you stated, exhaustion and even irritability, where you're trying so hard to fix or change something that might not be fixable or potentially changeable at this time, but you've taken on this responsibility. Take a moment. Are there any questions coming up? And you feel free to put those in the chat if they do. Some research on burnout, and I used a couple different areas because I know that for everyone who's registered, we have a barrage of different job titles. So one thing to think about is, especially in counselors, they found that 85.7%, it was a sample of 35, but still a pretty large amount, were showing some degree of burnout. So burnout was either something counselors should be aware of or paying attention to if they weren't overly demonstrating the signs or the symptoms of burnout. So this threatens your well-being, your holistic well-being. We also found that when exploring teachers, they had a larger number of burnout, and that was specific when the responsibilities of the work were not also connected to the rewards. There was a mismatch of responsibility to rewards, which is something that we're seeing in the realm of work today in the world that we're in. And many times for helpers who are out there still working with our clients, still teaching our students, and at a physical risk, and also an emotional and psychological one. They did find in the study that pedagogical self-efficacy could decrease burnout. So learning more about that work that you're doing in the classroom can actually engage and prevent burnout, which we'll talk about a little more when we talk about the 5 different types of wellness. With vicarious trauma, you start to experience that lack of empathy. You decrease effectiveness and you increase the potential to harm your clients because you're unable to connect with them. You've kind of slipped into that numb place. And actually in 1994, which is an older study, but there have been some more that came after that, where they're looking at social workers who were dealing with catastrophic events, natural or man-made disasters, that after responding to these events, they had high cognitive disturbances and intrusive thoughts. And this is something to keep in mind in these high trauma work situations, is that as helpers, we are always in a high trauma work situation. And with our current pandemic, we're also surrounded by continuous traumatic situations and changes to our very life. With compassion fatigue, it actually we saw psychological distress with social workers. So in 2009, after the September 11th terrorist attacks in the World Trade Center, compassion fatigue was directly connected to psychological stress, to trauma, to personal and professional well-being decrease. And that was after working with people who had experienced the trauma. They also explored self-care and compassion fatigue. They found a negative correlation between self-care and compassion fatigue, showing that when hospice professionals were able to engage in self-care, they were actually able to decrease their compassion fatigue. And we talked before about how it is a process. Vicarious trauma is a process, but that it can be influenced by wellness and self-care. So let's talk about what impacts burnout, and then we're going to talk about how we can decrease burnout. So something to consider, and I want you to kind of do this as a checklist. Some of the impacting factors that increase your chances for burnout are prolonged exposure, so ongoing sense of responsibility for the care and suffering over a protracted period of time, which within our current climate, within our current world, with our pandemic, we all have a prolonged exposure, right? Traumatic recollections are memories that trigger the symptoms of PTSD, and they're associated with reactions like depression and anxiety. So are you having memories bubble to the surface that are actually impacting your work? And then there's also life disruption. And I think we all have a little bit of that, right? Our lives have been largely disrupted. Unexpected changes in your schedule and your routine and managing life responsibilities. And these changes impact how we work. So the personal and professional are bleeding into each other. That was a lot. So I want to check in with how are we feeling? On a scale of 0, which is all right, to too serious for numbers, I'd like you to put in the chat, how are we feeling right now after talking about burnout? What's going on for everybody? Nice. Feels good to talk about it, yeah. We're ranging from the 1s to the 6s around that area, which is I might cry a little bit. Even a 1 is like, oh, not so great. And it makes sense, right? So I like take a moment before we move to the next area. And I know I said to check on your shoulders, but let's do a little 5-7-9 breathing. That's where you inhale to the count of 5, hold that breath to the count of 7, then exhale to the count of 9. If you can do it, breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. And we're just going to do that real quick because that was a lot. Are you ready? Okay. In, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. One more time. 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right. Just a little bit of breathing. Sometimes we forget to breathe. So we talked about how burnout is a process, how wellness is a process, and they are parallel to each other. You're constantly throughout your career moving from the continuum of wellness to impairment, and that is natural and normal. So as we move through this continuum, we have to connect with how do we actually engage in self-care? And remember that self-care is a holistic strategy, and it is deliberate that we engage in this self-care. And it is a continuous and ever-evolving plan. There are different types of self-care. Many of you have maybe seen something like this. Bubble bath, chocolates, wine, it's beautiful, right? It's just the dream self-care, but that's not really how it works. I wish that it was. If it was, it would be so simple, but self-care can look a lot of different ways. It can be boring. It can be existential. It can be challenging to work through, but know that anything you do to take care of yourself is valuable and helpful. And that many of the things that you put on your to-do list are also things that are part of your self-care. They're not just a checkbox. They're you engaging in that. And that's something to be celebrated. So when we're engaging in a wellness plan, we're committed to some form of self-care that helps our ethical practice and that engages us in a new process. And now I'll pass it over to Dr. Joo, who's going to talk more about the fun stuff, which is what is wellness. So I stressed you out.
Okay, I'll talk about the wellness and then share some ideas that you can promote wellness as well. Next. Okay, so this is definition of wellness from Myers et al. 2000. Definition here is that wellness is a way of life oriented toward optimal health and well-being in which body, mind, and spirit are integrated, by the individual to live life more fully within the human and natural community. Ideally, the optimal state of health and well-being that each individual is capable of achieving. So as you can see in the figure here, it's continuum. So low point is illness, and the high point is wellness, and neutral is health. So we can achieve wellness by putting a consistent effort, making health choices, and developing a healthy lifestyle. Next. There are different models explaining wellness, and we chose the indivisible self model, which is the evidence-based model of wellness from Meyer and Sweeney. And this is a model is often used in counseling field as well. So in this model, like we look at the person as a whole, like a whole person, that body, mind, and spirit are integrated and inseparable. And there are 5 factors here. So as you can see in the figure, creative self, coping self, social self, essential self, physical self. And it's also ecological model that context impact our wellness. So like your local, institutional, global, like lifespan, what's happening in your life, or what's happening in the world, like global pandemic, impact our wellness. So your wellness level in a sum or each factor may change based on what's happening in your life or community or globally. And you can improve wellness by examining your wellness and taking small steps. So in our presentation today, we will share some small steps you can take. And actually, at the end of the presentation, there will be an activity with a small group that you will come up with a SMART goal and action plan that you can promote your wellness. Next. Okay, so there are 5 factors in this indivisible self model, and I will explain each in detail shortly. And after that, there will be a poll asking, which self do you want to promote the most? Okay, next. The first is creative self. So creative self includes strategies that uniquely address the joys and challenges with our life demands. So it includes thinking, being open-minded, like having curiosity, emotions, being aware of and getting in touch with your feelings, being able to express it appropriately, control, belief that you can achieve your goal, being able to be assertive in expressing your needs, work, being satisfied with your work, feeling that your skills are using appropriately, and cope with workplace stress. And positive humor is being able to laugh at your mistakes or any unexpected things that happen, and the ability to use humor. So how well are you in this creative self? You may think about that. Now, I want to share some ideas that can promote creative self. Again, this is some examples. You may have better or great ideas to promote creative self. So some tips or ideas I want to share are first, recognizing that you are not your thoughts. So when you're very stressed out at your work like that, and if you have a thought that I'm powerless, add I'm having the thought that in front of your thought. So rather than just thinking I am powerless, change that to I'm having the thought that I am powerless. So you are like recognizing that you thought is just a thought. For example, rather than just thinking I should be perfect, add I'm having the thought that. So I'm having the thought that I should be perfect, which may be true, which may not be true, right? So that helps you to be more flexible or recognizing your thought just as a thought, not as a fact. Another idea is the power of yet. So, this comes from growth mindset that you may add yet at the end of the sentence. So rather than say, I cannot solve this problem, I cannot solve this problem yet. So by, putting more effort, you will be able to solve the problem sometime. With feelings, understand your feeling and label your feelings. And then try to experience your emotion as a wave. It's not something permanent, but experience your feeling as a wave coming and going. That acknowledge that emotion is temporary, it's not permanent. You may also broaden your perspective by reading a different book, journal, magazine. In terms of work, name strength you have in work and explain how that has helped you outside of work as well. For humor, you may read or watch something funny. Next. Coping self is how you respond to life events, including those of negative consequences. So leisure is something that you do in your free time, stress management, and self-worth, accepting your positive qualities along with imperfections, and having realistic belief that understanding the perfection or loved by everyone is impossible, it's unrealistic, right? And having courage to be imperfect. How well are you in this coping self? So some ideas to promote wellness coping self is setting aside specific time throughout the week to do something you enjoy, that your leisure time, so schedule it in your planner. Engage in self-reflection by keeping a journal. Make a list of things that help you relax. It can be bubble bath, it can be taking a walk. Practice mindfulness meditation. Think about a time when you practiced forgiveness and what that experience was like for you. And I really want to highlight this one. Treat yourself as you would treat a good friend. As a helper, we are often being very compassionate and caring to others, but being self-critical. So sending that love, kindness, gentleness to yourself, especially when you really need it, when you're really stressed out or are tired or are overwhelmed. Treat yourself gently, with love, with kindness, rather than being harsh to yourself. And implement daily positive affirmation. So, I know some people use sticky notes on the mirror or have reminder on the phone. So, or have a list of affirmation that they can check every morning like that, but implement that in daily routine. Next is social self, which includes support through friendship or intimate relationship. So some ideas can be participating in a virtual social activity with friends or family. To reflect your current relationship, you may draw the representation of your current relationship in terms of quality of your connection with others, where you may join a new social group. Or having an open and honest communication with your friends or partner or family. Next. Okay, so we have two more. This is essential self, which is meaning-making process in relation to yourself, others, and life. So it includes spirituality, gender identity, cultural identity, and self-care. And self-care here is taking responsibility for your wellness through self-care. How well are you in this essential self? Some ideas to promote essential self is maybe asking someone close to you about how they define spirituality, or you may practice daily meditation. You may create a self-care plan and integrate that in your life. Or you may write or share stories of personal development. You may discuss gender-specific issues with someone close to you, or list some of your cultural belief or value, or read more about your culture. Okay, the last one is physical self. So it includes exercise and nutrition. How well is your physical self? Some ideas to promote physical self wellness is, you may list physical activities that you enjoy doing, do stretching exercises, especially, we are sitting a lot at home this day. Find an exercise routine. Maybe you can try new healthy food, or balance your meal, drink water, eating slowly, or practice mindful eating. Next. Dr. Marshall?
Yeah, sorry about that. I lost my button. I have a couple screens I'm working. Sorry about that. So before we move into discussing how we engage with this as a community, let's do a small poll. So you learned about these 5 different types of wellness, and I'm wondering if you would like to choose one that maybe you'd want to work on the most. So let's do a quick poll. I'm going to launch this now. You should see on your screen the poll come up. Okay. Everybody see it on their screen? And you can choose. Oh, wow, look at that. All right. Looks like physical self might be one of the higher ones we're focusing on. Oh, there's some for creative. Coping as well is coming up, as well as social. All right, so it looks like we have 45% who are looking into physical wellness, 5% working in social wellness, and then 50% in creative and 25% in coping. So keep which one you'd like to work with in your mind. Let me share these results with you so you can see them. So it's nice to look at these as a community as we are together right now, because wellness can be done in a community. It doesn't have to be done alone. And it's something to explore. Ooh, pop back up again. Okay. Something to explore is that a lot of our ideas of wellness and how we should take care of ourselves are coming from a very Western perspective. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, with self-actualization becoming the very top of that pyramid. And we're trying to fulfill psychological needs, safety needs, belongingness, esteem, need to be known and understand, aesthetic needs, self-actualization at the very top, but there's more to it than that. And what we're doing today is working together to build a community of care. So self-actualization is not the end. We go a little more than that. As a community, as helpers, as humans, we can actually work to help each other, not just in holding each other accountable, but working together to notice when we are impaired, when we need help, when we need aid. sorry. Community care is also about empowerment. So we're identifying strengths and resources for yourself, your clients, and your students. So in working on your own wellness, we're working on community-based wellness, and we're helping to advocate for those wellness needs, not just for ourselves, but for those that we work with. Identifying social, political, economic, and cultural factors that affect our wellness, and helping our clients and students do the same. We're working with developmental level, but also with what the barriers are to our own wellness. We want to help develop self-advocacy skills. And in order to do that with our clients, we also have to do that work. So wellness work is something that is sometimes a little mismatched or unbalanced for us as helpers. We try so hard to cultivate these skills with our clients, and we sometimes forget about ourselves. So when building this community of care, we're going to work together to help build our plans. Turn it over to Dr. Joo.
Okay, so we will make a plan. So there are 5 factors I mentioned: creative self, coping self, social self, essential self, and physical self. And you will choose one factor to work on, right? That you want to promote more. And you will create one goal, preferably SMART goal, that's specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound to improve your wellness. So choose one factor and create one SMART goal. And then you will create first action step to support your goal. So for example, you chose social self, and you may set up goal that you want to increase connection with 3 longtime friends by the end of this year. An action step may set up a virtual happy hour every other Friday with at least 3 friends. So we will do this activity in a group, but you will come up with your individual plan and goal, but we'll also work together in a group that you may share ideas, help each other as well. So at this point, we will pause recording.
Discussion. All right, we're recording. So I wanted to pose the question, what was it like to share your wellness goals with others? What was that process like? And you can put your comments in the chat, or you can speak if you like, whichever one makes you more comfortable. Let's see. What was it like to share your wellness goal with others?
I just see hands up. You can unmute yourself if you want to talk. Yeah.
Oh, I see some chats in here.
Yes.
Yeah, you can
First
go.
of all, first of all, I want to say thank you. Appreciate for this great presentation. I really need it. And I want to say, yes, I have a good feeling. If I want to, score my feeling at the beginning of the session, and right now, I can say at least 2 or 3, decreased my stress or, scaling of the opportunity, because I think we need to chat with each other and understand, okay, we are not alone. There are someone else who has issue. Maybe the issue is not exactly the same as our issue, or is not, the measure of our issues are different, but still they are struggling with something and learning from each other. Okay, how she's what techniques is she using for relaxation and self-care, and yes, much better eating, cooking.
Excellent. It's so nice to hear that other people are experiencing this too. And even if your goals are different, we're all experiencing something together, this need to find wellness. And some people talked about relating to the people in their group and being able to talk to someone and finding connection. And I think that's something to always consider when you're thinking of a community that cares. And we are a community of carers, right? We're all helpers in some way, and we can care for each other as well. So
yeah, and I do see in the chat that it was great to share ideas, like, different ideas for the, wellness plan, and also come up with like more accountability to follow through the goal.
yes, so your friends help hold you accountable and also give you connection. So as you're thinking about how to expand your plans or how to engage in the plans, please consider that plans are always changing. And whenever I do this, or I'm making my own plan, I'm helping a client make a plan, or I'm helping my scholars make a plan, we're also working together to find out if the plan works. Because if your plan is smart and you think it's really going to work out, but then you realize, oh, I'm not following through with it, then readjust the plan. Kind of like the not yet idea. It's not maybe right yet. Or I'm having a thought. But a reminder is that burnout is not permanent. It's a natural part of the process of helpers. We vacillate from wellness to burnout all the time. But a lot of times when you Google burnout, the first thing you see is this match. And that's very finalizing, right? But you're not a match. You're a fireplace. You're a fire that needs to be tended. Your flame can be tended, it can burn brighter, it can burn lower at times, and that's okay. Sometimes you need help pulling the embers out and cleaning out the chimney and making sure that you're in a healthy place so your fire can continue burning. But you're not a match. You're continuously and always finding new healthy ways to engage with self-care and find new ways to burn. So before we move on to saying our goodbyes and some extra resources, what are some final thoughts that you'll have that you would like to share? And you can feel free to put those in the chat or speak through the video.
I'm gonna say thank you for hosting this. Oh, this is Ashley Cook, by the way. Hello. Say thank you for hosting this program. I think a lot of us are feeling this stress, especially now. Like we're not only caring for other people, but you're in your home doing it, and some of us are still in school. Some of us have all these other obligations, and it's hard to manage and balance all that. So it's nice to be able to connect with others and hear we're all kind of struggling with the same thing, but we all have different solutions that we can help each other with. So thank you for hosting this.
Yes, exactly. I want to say thank you. Sometimes we really need to be connected together. And thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for this thoughtful idea that you present this subject, because most of us, we really need it. And I think I need to review it more and more and more by myself and say, okay, yes, don't forget. Just remind myself that I have to think about my self-care, as well as thinking about a lot of goals that I have. And because of situation, I cannot achieve to my goal. So.
Great idea. And also the people who can support us with our goals.
Yes.
Well, we will send these PowerPoints out to you, of course, and you can read through them more. We also have these extra resources, learning more about some of the information that we shared. Know that you can reach out to us anytime. We're here to support you as well as we're building this community of helpers. We're also here to support each other. Thank you all.
Thank you. And I would like to pre-congratulate you on your PhD.